I take my fair share of criticism from the right and from the left. You know, I came here to fight for a smaller, less costly, more accountable federal government. And this budget agreement takes giant steps in the right direction. It's not everything I wanted. But when groups come out and criticize an agreement that they've never seen, you begin to wonder just how credible those actions are.
All right, folks, that was John Boehner earlier today. As I mentioned earlier in the show, doubling down on remarks he made yesterday. Joining us now to talk about this is Chris Chocola, president of the Club for Growth. Hey, Chris, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. All right. Now, earlier in the show, we spoke with another man who had an interest in this, and he had Matt Kibbe, who said that these remarks by Boehner create a problem going forward. What's your take on Boehner's? It's not something he said in anger yesterday and then tempered it down today. He ratcheted it up today.
Well, he did. He's frustrated, and he's got a tough job. You know, the Club for Growth, we took the same position as some other groups. We didn't comment before we saw it, but it doesn't really matter because what the groups that commented it before they saw it, they were right. I mean, they anticipated what the deal would be, and they said if that's the case, we'll oppose it. We waited till we saw it, and it was something that we opposed. So I'm not sure what the speaker's point is other than he is frustrated. And, you know, frankly, I'd be frustrated, too, if I had his job, frankly, because he couldn't get enough Republicans to do what Republicans say they're for, and that was keep the sequester, to make sure we don't bust the spending caps. And the House could have passed that easily with no Democrat votes. But they chose not to, and they chose to say what Republicans or politicians, regardless of their party, always say is, we can't do the hard work now, so trust us to do the hard work later. So he said this takes giant strides. It takes almost no strides. It raises the deficit immediately. It spends more immediately, and it says in year 9 and 10, trust us to save more later. And I'm not sure what Congress has done in our recent memory that should instill that trust in anybody.
Yeah, and you have, I know that you're in support with the top three Senate Republicans who are all on record as opposing this budget. It's not going to matter in the Senate. But what do you think the motivation was here? I mean, speculation has been that they would do anything to avoid any kind of scrutiny from the media and give the left any kind of talking points by, talking about a shutdown or having that risk rear its ugly head again. But, first of all, I'm of the opinion that if you handle it right, no matter what the media says, and they did not handle the shutdown right, you could pin the blame where the blame belonged, and that was on the President of the United States for not negotiating and who was willing to go over the so-called cliff with the debt ceiling because he wouldn't do as much as delay the device tax for a year. But they don't, they don't know how to express themselves, and here it resulted in this capitulation out of fear of being made the villain again.
Well, this is, I served in the House for a while, and I saw it firsthand, and it frankly changed my life. And the problem is that Republicans are afraid of their own agenda. They're afraid of the things that they believe or they say they believe in, and
including Boehner.
Well, John, I like John Boehner. He's a nice guy. He's got a tough job, and he's probably more conservative than he leads. And so I'm not going to beat up on Boehner. But the problem is it's the behavior of the Republicans when they are in the majority. They are in the majority in the House. All they had to do was say, we're going to keep the sequester and do essentially a clean continuing resolution, send it to Harry Reid and say, what are you going to do with that? Now, he'd have to do something with that. And if he didn't take it up and he didn't pass it, that would put the onus on the Democrats that they simply want to bust the spending caps and they want a bigger government and more debt. But the problem is Republicans don't do what they say they're for. And so the danger here is that Democrats lose their legislative majorities when they actually do what they say they believe. They believed in Obamacare. They passed it. They lost their majority in the House. But Republicans lose their legislative majorities when they don't do what they say they believe in. This budget deal is not consistent with what Republicans say they believe. And the danger is that Republican voters are going to be very disappointed and start to jeopardize their performance on Election Day and a year from now.
Are you surprised that that Grover Norquist went along with this? Even said that it holds much of the sequester in place.
Well, I'll let Grover speak for himself, but it holds none of the sequester in place because what it proved is if we don't have to do it in the next 2 years, we never have to do it.
Right.
And so once you open the door, everyone runs out. And so, again, are we supposed to believe that we can't spend less today, but we're going to spend less tomorrow? It's a joke that the American people are too smart. They've seen this play before. It ends the same way every time. And give me one example where they've said we're going to behave better later than we are willing to right now. It just doesn't happen.
And Congressman, so where do we go from here? Does your group is it discouraged by the tone of Boehner? Does it back off? Does it double down yourselves and try to vote out the people who would vote for this? Well, where do you go?
Well, what's most important is what the American people think, more than what we think or what John Boehner thinks. I don't take Boehner's comments personally. He's frustrated. I understand. All we do is focus on the policy, and this is not pro-growth policy. But the concern that everyone should have is, does this discourage enough Republicans and compromise their opportunity to hold the House in 2014? I don't know the answer to that yet, but certainly
you knew my next question.
Well, I saw, when I served in the House from 2002 to 2006. It
Right.
was the worst time for the Republican brand. We betrayed the brand to the point where we got kicked out of office.
We got 20 seconds, Congressman, just so you know.
And
yeah.
that's a lesson I'm just not sure Republican leadership ever learns.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I hope to speak to you again, and have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, sir.
Great. Thank you, too, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, folks, there you go. Former Congressman Chris Chocola, president of the Club for Growth. Yeah. It's crazy, and the media is playing up this war. Conservatives, just like they did during the shutdown, the evil Tea Party against this establishment. They never get tired of it. Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio, coming right back.
The Steve